Hey, welcome to Learning with Lou, and today we're going to talk about writing decimals as fractions and the other way around, fractions as decimals. Decimals and fractions can actually represent the same amount, and as you can see here we have 0.3, 3/10, along with the fraction 3/10. And if you look at the visuals right above them, you'll see that they both show the same thing. 10 total equal parts and 3 out of the 10 shaded in. That's because 0.3 and 3/10 are actually the same amount. They take up the same amount of space. Now, it's important to remember that this is out of 10 because our decimal place value here, it only goes to the tenths. You have 0.3 that stops in the tenths place. That's what makes your denominator of the fraction 10. Down here, you can see another example. You have 0.57, which is 57 hundredths. They both represent 57 out of 100 total parts. Now, I knew that I had to show this as hundredths because that's where my decimal place value stops. My 7, my last number all the way to the right, is in the hundredths place, and that's what tells me that my denominator has to also be 100. So your decimal place value is kind of going to tell you how to get your denominator. So again, over here we have a 3 in the tenths place, which is how we got 3/10, and down here we have 57 hundredths. Our decimal place value furthest to the right is in the hundredths place. That's how I got my denominator of 100. Even if you don't have visuals, rewriting a decimal as a fraction is really not that hard, especially if you just take a look at these two steps I have here for you. So, the first thing you want to do is identify your decimal place value furthest to the right to get your denominator. So in this example here, I have 0.28. Now I know that's 28 hundredths, but you could think about your decimal place value. So starting at the decimal point, you have your tenths and your hundredths. Since my decimal place value furthest to the right is in the hundredths place, my denominator is actually going to be 100. And it says that right down here as well. So again, the furthest decimal place value to the right in this example is in the hundredths. That's why I got a denominator of 100. And then the second step, all you do is take all of your digits to the right of the decimal point, all the digits that are in decimal place values, and make that your numerator. So down here I see a 2 and an 8 as my two digits in the decimal place values. That means my numerator is going to be 28. So my fraction is 28 hundredths. I have a 2 in the tenths and an 8 in the hundredths. That gives me 28 hundredths. If my decimal were to stop right in the tenths place, let's say we didn't have this 8 here, it was just 0.2, that would actually make my denominator just a 10, not 100. So you have to make sure you're looking at those decimal place values very carefully because that'll tell you what your denominator is going to be. So let's take a look at one of these together before I have you try it on your own. So I have 0.19. So first thing I want to do is I'm just going to set up my fraction bar because I know I'm writing fractions here. Now starting from my decimal point, I want to find my furthest decimal place value to the right. So I have tenths and then I have my 9 here in the hundredths. Since I'm in the hundredths place, that's going to be my denominator, 100. So I'm going to put my 100 on the bottom there. Now what I'm going to do is take a look at the digits I have in my decimal place value. I'm going to take a look at all of them. So I have 1 in the tenths, 9 in the hundredths. I'm going to take both of these and make that my numerator. So it's 19 hundredths. That's my fraction. 0.19 is really 19 hundredths. So how about you pause the video here, try some of these on your own, and then when you unpause it, I'll show you the answers so you can see how you did. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the rest of our answers here. For 0.85, we got 85 hundredths because our 5 was in the hundredths place, and then we brought our 85 over. For 0.07, we got 7 hundredths because remember, this 7 is also in the hundredths place, not the tenths, so we just bring a 7 over for 7 hundredths, not 7 tenths and not 70 hundredths, specifically 7 hundredths. Up here we got 0.4, which our 4 is just in the tenths place, giving us 4 tenths. Right below it we have 0.77 to get 77 hundredths. And then down here we have 0.219. Now our furthest decimal place over to the right is actually the thousandths place. So I made my denominator 1000 and my numerator is 219 because I have 219. So we got 219 thousandths. So that being said, rewriting a fraction as a decimal is just as easy. It's kind of just like doing the reverse of what we just did. Let's take a look at an example here. So we have 4 tenths that we want to rewrite as a decimal. the first thing you want to do is use your denominator to identify where your decimal place value has to reach. Now, I like to draw lines up until that place value, and you'll see what I mean in the next example too. So we have 4/10, I have 0 point, and then I just put a line under my tenths place because that's where I want to stop my decimal. Then all you do is you take your numerator, which in this case is 4, and you put that in the decimal place value that you had to underline. Then all you have to do is just take your numerator, which in this case is 4, and drop it right into your decimal place value. So right to the right of your decimal point, I take my numerator and I put it right there in the tenths place. Let's take a look at one more example. So now we have 9/100. Now again, you want to identify where your decimal place value has to reach. So we have 100 as our denominator. I'm going to draw 2 lines, one to get to the tenths place, and then another one for the hundredths place, because this tells me where my decimal has to end. Now this is where my students always get confused. I always see somebody put 0.9 because your numerator is only one number, but that's incorrect because you didn't reach your hundredths place. So if you take a look down below, you'll actually see that we have our 9 going into the hundredths place because there's nothing else that's going to go behind it. It has to end there. So what do you do with that empty space? You just put a 0 in it. So 9/100 as a decimal is 0.09. We've reached our hundredths place, and anything before it, because there's no other digit here in our numerator, is just 9. Any empty spaces, you just make a 0. So again, 9/100 would be 0.09. One final thing to remember is that there are some other denominators you'll see that could actually still be rewritten as a decimal. And some of these really common ones are going to be 1/4, 1/2, and 3/4. And this is because of simplifying. If you have 25/100, it can really be simplified to 1/4 if you divide both your numerator and denominator by 25. So if you ever see 1/4 and they're asking you to rewrite it as a fraction, just remember that it's really 0.25 25/100. Same thing goes for 1/2. 1/2 can be written as 0.5 or 0.50 because it's technically 50/100, which can be simplified down to 1/2. And the last one I have here on this page is 3/4. You could simplify it by dividing both numerator and denominator by 25. That would be 75/100. So 0.75 or 75/100 is really equivalent to 3/4. If you want an easy way to remember this, think about it like using quarters to count up to $1. You have 25 cents, which is 1/4 of $1. You have 50 cents, which is 1/2 of $1. And you have 75 cents, which is 3/4 of $1. It's 3/4, which would be 75 cents. That's how you get these fractions to also be rewritten as decimals. So as always, we'll do one more together here, and then I'll have you pause the video and try to do the rest on your own. So over here we have 6/10. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put my 0 decimal point, and I'm going to underline just to my tenths place because I know that that's where I want to stop. All I do now is just take my numerator 6 and I put it in there. So my decimal would be 0.6. How about you pause the video here and try the rest on your own, and then when you unpause, you can see how you did. Alright, so you could check your answers here with mine and see how you did. For 1/2, that's equivalent to 0.5, or if you put 0.50 for 50/100, that's also correct. For 2/100, we have to put our 2 in the hundredths place, so 0.02, because we would have an empty space here. You can't leave it empty, you gotta fill it in with a 0. Up here we have 194 thousandths, so that would be 0.194 because we have to end all the way here in the thousandths place. You take your numerator and just drop it in. Right underneath it, 3/4, we have 0.75 for 75/100, because remember that simplification. And then the last one here, 91/100, we have 0.91. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope this helped give you a better understanding of the relationship between fractions and decimals, and how to rewrite decimals as fractions and the other way around. Remember, if you follow the link in my description, it'll bring you to my shop where you can purchase any of these resources that you see in my videos. If you feel that you've learned something from my videos, please do me a favor and hit that like button so I know, and be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can see other math topics covered in the future. Thank you again for watching, and never stop learning.